And I'll just move this over because I have two screens. Cool. So everyone's already done the Unreal Engine, so that's good. We're using Unreal 5. If you've had a previous installation and you want to change the default engine, you can come down to the drop-down arrow and say Set Current, and that way you always launch into Unreal 5. I will launch it, but I've already made the project again. I didn't want to compile shaders while doing a demo. It's going to slow down everything for you folks. Basic where? Oh, well, no, there's no. All right. So I'm launching the engine right now, and I'm going to go over some of the settings for starting off stuff, but also like any good cooking show, I already have the pie I can take out of the oven at any point. It's like we put it in the oven, and here's the pie comes out of the oven. All right. So here's the launcher. It lets me see all my projects I've already created. Um, you know, I highly recommend always giving your project a name. Whenever there's shared computers, I hate anytime I see anything that says my project by default, like at the end of the semester, I'll see my project 1 through 45. Those get deleted. Just like give it a name if it's important to you. So you can say recent projects. You can use a game template. You might have seen that you have some cool ones with vehicles. Virtual reality templates, really amazing. They made great improvements to virtual reality. They've gotten rid of a few templates. I wonder if they're like somewhere else. I've actually had to install 427 for today because I want to show some things that no longer exist in 5.0. Like you used to have a marble template where you can play at Marble Madness and stuff. So lots of great templates. I'm going to start with blank today, just so that we earn everything we can. Film and video, it's got some cool things. Here's the in display stuff. Here's like the LED wall stuff. Architecture, we're actually going to use this collaborative viewer the second half of the semester. By default, it's a multiplayer design tool. So out of the box, either in VR or on screen, we can play multiplayer with each other and like move around entire like architectural things. So we'll play around with that the second half of the semester. One of the great reasons to make sure you have a good computer here to use. Super great stuff. And then you have a lot of stuff with automotive, which I really have never touched upon. Cool. And then you're going to create a project. You're going to give it a name. Like, for instance, I was going to do blank. We don't need to do C++ for anything yet. So Blueprint, desktop, maximum quality, that's what you're going to be using. And then starter content. Don't always check this on. This is 600 megabytes of additional crap that you don't need all the time. And if you always add it to your computer, imagine that you have like 18 projects with 600 megabytes of like shitty fire particles. Like it's really going to add a lot of bloat. Today, the homework assignment is to use starter content. So this is one time you'll do it, but usually you can always add it in later. Like there's always an option to find it and add it in later. So I always recommend once you check it off, I think by default, launcher will always be checked off. Be wary of that. Ray tracing, not quite sure if I have to check it on to have Lumen work. I don't think so. So I think now that Lumen has supplanted ray tracing, I don't have to, I don't know. I have to, again, I'm going to stumble through 5 with you guys today. I've never done this demo before in 5. We're going to find out what happens. And if I mess it up really bad, then I'll just go home and lick my wounds and record another one for you that's actually correct. And I've done that many times before. You know, live demos are kind of hard, right? So all that kind of stuff. But as I said, it takes a while to compile shaders when you first start a project. So I have already started a project. And while it loads up, I will get my I'll get my notes on because I have a list of things to go through today and I don't want to forget any of them. That was the wrong thing to open up. But boom, it's already opened up. Winning. Fall 2020. I'm gonna have something up my sleeve, right? All right. So I'm gonna do the windows. Okay. So the first thing I highly recommend whenever starting a class and starting learning Unreal Engine is to actually not do what I just did, is to actually go to the what used to be called the Learn tab, what's it called now, Samples, and then find this wonderful thing called Content Examples. Every engine version, they update this with all the most recent advances in Unreal Engine. They completely changed for 5.0, as you would expect. What it didn't do was give me the one thing I wanted. So I had to install 427 for today, and show you the content examples, because the lesson we want to learn is from 427. But again, these content examples, everyone should have it on a computer. It is the encyclopedia of everything you do with the Unreal Engine. There's so many times where I've gone looking in forums and trying to discover things, and it's right there. There's all these different halls of science that are like addresses fluids and particles and lighting and blueprints and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely not something I would go through, for entertainment and for enjoyment, but it's definitely something that everyone should have as a reference to get into it. So see, it's like these halls of information. All right, does all the stuff. And then if you hit the file open, there's a list of all the different halls of science, right? It's animation and mouse blueprints and all sorts of stuff, decals. What we're interested in is actually the one called level design workflow. And this doesn't exist in the content examples for 5.0, but it's still very relevant because it's a workflow. It's not really technology. It's the idea. So what we have is 4 different passes of how to design a level. And today we're pretty much doing the prototype pass, or the homework for this week is the prototype pass, blocking out things, figuring out scale, figuring out user flow and stuff like that. All right. It's something that we play. Meshing pass, which means we're going to kind of add back in. We're going to kind of combine it. I'd say we could still play with a bunch of lighting today just because it's so fun, but we're not going to worry about assets. The assets are all going to come from the starter content. We'll get into using assets in 2 weeks, right? We'll go deep dive into that. Then you can do a lighting pass where you really bring in people who specialize in lighting and making sure everything nook and cranny looks great. Your materials are refined so you know how the materials look with the correct lighting. And then you start adding in particles and audio and all sorts of stuff, right? So if I were to hit play, okay, here's first pass, right? Simple layout, right? These are not the right geometry, but it is the right scale. It is the right layout. So I get the idea of how long it takes to walk around and do things, but very minimal. If I were to go back up here to the front, I hit the right arrow, blink. Now, second pass, replace the geometry and start getting more finished assets, right? So now we have this actual model of, this is the winged, the Samothrace. This is actually the Met Museum. And then, or it could be Samothrace, I guess, if it's Greek. Anyway, so a little bit of materials in there. It's more blocked out. Right. But, that's not fire, right? There's some holes in there for sure. Then I've actually never gone this way before. Oh, look at that. Unlock something. All right. All right. So next we're going to third pass. Better lighting materials. See, it's got mood, atmospherics. You start getting a little bit of fire. I mean, kinda, not really. And then everything else in there. Cool. We got some specular highlights. We got roughness and smoothness. We got metallics. And now we got audio. We've got smoke and particles coming out of it. A little more tchotchke, some decals, some wear and tear. Anyway, this is kind of idea, right? Better textures. So don't just jump to this, is what I'm saying. That's the entire point of this whole demo, is don't jump to this. Realize that you're going to be iterating, you're doing multiple passes. Don't spend too much time to make something really minute look great yet, because you're just still trying to make it a basic experience. Cool. So we are going to start our own project, which I've done here. And you see this is an empty project. So here's the Unreal layout. You should know it by now. One thing I did by default was definitely make sure I docked my content browser. It just makes it easier for me to find things. The whole control spacebar thing didn't jive with my workflow. Right now what we're making is a sandbox project. This is your own thing. It's going to be, it's where you're going to make mistakes on your own and always working here. We're going to have a shared project later on in the semester, and we're going to have to be really good neighbors with each other and learn how to share projects together. Right now, we can make those mistakes and learn better as we go along, and you're always going to make mistakes when you first start off. I just acknowledge that this is your own sandbox to do whatever the heck you want to because it's on your own hard drive. And then we're using a blank template, and there we go. But when we get a little bit later on, and what I'll reference a lot today is a thing called a style guide. And I'm sure as some of you are in thesis, you're understanding there's writing style guides. In the same way, there's a style guide for how to use an engine with each other. One of the most visible ones to find. There's many different uh, there's many different style guides, but this one's mine. And these are the rules for how you name things, how you put folders in certain structures. Every single project should be made and to look like it was one person who developed it, even if it's a team of 200, right? And at the beginning of every project, not only do we decide our pipeline, is we pick our style guide. There's many style guides. This is one to build off of. You often build your own style guide. You come into agreement of everything is named in a certain way and that things go in a certain place, all right? Lots of information here. Um, Things like cases. Do you do camel case or do you do snake case or Pascal case, right? Do you use underscores? Do you just use capitalization? These are things that help you find files in a project should you need to go searching for them, right? So so here's some principles, and you should actually kind of like know these by heart. Again, if you want to work with teams and using the Unreal Engine. If your Unreal project already has a style guide, you should follow it, right? Makes sense. What is a style guide, guys? What is, and gals, what are the what are we adhering to? Um, so arguments over style are pointless. It should already be decided before the project gets going. Okay. Um, all structures, assets, and code in Unreal should always look like a single person created, no matter how many people contributed. Right. So think about what it takes to be able to achieve that when it comes to folder structures and how everything is organized. Friends, do not let friends have bad style. Correct your friends if they're using a bad style. I will do that when you turn in your homework, and I'll say, everything is beautiful, but you named that wrong. And it is something because I've worked in projects, and it's something that's worth addressing and knowing that you should improve upon. A team without a style guide is no team of mine. I can't tell you how important this last rule is. If you start a project with somebody, no matter how expensive or how big or how sophisticated a team, if you say, "Can I sure what's your style guide document? Is it a Google Doc? Is it a slide?" They're like, "Oh, we don't have a style guide." Run away. They have no idea what they're doing. I don't know at what level they don't know what they're doing. It could be the owner, the producer, the technical artist, but they don't know what they're doing. So a team without a style guide is no team of mine, right? Um, really, really run away if they don't know what we're talking about. And then whatever. What he has is this guy. This guy named is Michael Allar. He's one of those like gruff like guys, and he's a developer like lives in the basement and drinks Mountain Dew, and it's like, oh, he's like makes fun of people in the forums. He's actually really smart and gives a lot of free things to the community. He actually has a thing called Linter that helps change assets, and it does audits that will help keep your thing into a style guide. It's a free thing in the marketplace, so that's kind of useful for everything. And then there's, we keep on naming things. I'm pointing out static meshes and skeletal meshes. Those things are usually prepended or appended with SM or SK or blueprints or BP. Those are the things that you can help identify so you can search for things, right? Everything's be BP underscore something. So how do you call levels? Materials or M underscore, material instances or MI underscore. Again, all these things, and it becomes second nature really, really quickly. But it's important to address because honestly, it's like all I do these days is I get hired as a consultant to start projects for people and then go away and come back at the very end and fix it when they fuck it up. Cool. So we've talked about style guides. I need to move on because we barely even touched the engine so far. All right. So we have some new templates for Unreal 5. This is our famous minimal default Ames chairs. This is not one that really is, you can't really create this anymore. The new levels are open world, empty open world, basic, empty level. Open world, I'm going to just address it very quickly, and then we'll move on because it's not what we're going to use for creating our level. The cool thing about open world is that it's done this as this new thing called is divide the world into cells. This is called like the world partition grid, and this is a new feature. And it's a way of like navigating around. You could turn off geometry. I can like highlight these cells and say, actually, I'm facing down. So let me see. Here's me. There's the arrow facing down. I could say, unload all cells. Everything in front of me is now gone. Right. So it's a way of It's a way of oops. I just like do load all cells. I'm already screwing it all up. Anyway, so it's a way of turning cells off and on. It's a way of subdividing a map for other users to use. It used to be that you locked out a map and you could be in that map, and now you can have multiple people in the same map because it's partitioning things out as separate small maps for you. It's also cool in that you can you know you can move camera here, so I can move myself around using the top-down bird's eye view. I just need to go up. I'm gonna move my camera speed because this is an open world. There we go. So I want to load. So I've done something crazy. Oh, there it goes. Okay, just I'm on a laptop. I haven't been on this laptop all summer long, so it's forget how slow laptops can be. All right, where's my mouse? Oh, my mouse is freaking out. Okay, get back Unreal. I will fight you. But you might win. Okay, now we're back. So also as you kind of select things in your level, you can also it names them for you, so you can see where they are and where they're located, all this kind of stuff. It's cool, right? By default, all these maps in Unreal 5 have Lumen exposed already, and you can check that by going into your. Oh, I see what I was doing. I saw how to play. You go check that by going into your post processing potentially. I am going to call Uncle and not do an open world. It's too much. I have to remember to always practice my demos on the computer. I'm going to actually get the demos on. You can't sit around like a 3090 and like, and then come into sometimes I'm impatient. Yes, you go. I definitely had much more fun crashes before than that one. I've definitely gotten blue screens of death before. I have to realize that not only am I doing this, I'm also screen recording right at hard drive. And I used to actually teach VR, so they'd be doing VR and screen recording, and the computer was 5 years older. Yeah, we used to have some great blue screens of death. All right. So back to our aims chairs, the minimal default. You can start with this map and kind of play with it, but it's not it even though it has lumen turned on, it doesn't use a lot of the new features with the atmospheric sky. This is the old sky, which was the uh, called the BP Sky Sphere. This is an old way to doing things. It's a fun blueprint to mess around with and have stars come out and have cloud opacity and all that kind of stuff. But we have a new way of doing things that has like all volumetrics and stuff like that. So still love you minimal default. Let's do a new level. Let's just do a basic so we can take a look at Lemon real quick. Cool. So this is everything. All right. So if we let's see, how can I confirm Lumen is on without a post processing? Oh, I can just add a post processing. There you go. All right. All right. So this is basically a final pass of our render that kind of like does color correction, everything like that. And you can see by default, if I search for Lumen, and I know this is a small font, you can see that by default, everything is Lumen. All things are, I could have changed it to global illumination could be, instead of Lumen, could be uh, ray tracing or some other things, but everything is Lumen right now. All right, so let's take a look at Lumen. We have our standard starter content. I can go in here and find static meshes, or I can filter by static meshes. And Where's filter? I'm crazy. Ah, yes, filter by static meshes, right? And then I would just see what are the static meshes, and I could build like a little quick house in here. All right, so here's the door for our house, and here's the walls for our house. Rotate around. "90 degrees." Cool. Snap. Then I can hold down the Alt key and drag and makes a duplicate. Cool. And then maybe I'll just duplicate one of these suckers, put it in rotation mode and hit Alt and rotate. Doink. Cool. And I'm using W, E, and R to go move around between them. Great. So now this is our little house. Oh, a little crack in our house. All right. And let's add in a roof. So let's talk about Lumen real quick. So before, really, especially and still with mobile, you had to do things like bake lights. You had to put in lights, make them not move. We talked about the whole dynamic light thing, right? Where you couldn't move around lights. Well, now you can with Lumen, you can make everything dynamic, and that means that it should be taking a lot more processing, but because they've been able to employ this new technology, it's fine. There you go. So we now have our house. Cool. What you're seeing is actually, though, you can actually see inside of here. If I was open for Unreal 4 project, this would be a completely dark room. But what's happening is the lights coming in here and bouncing off all the walls. We're able to see everything. There is a thing, if you look outside, you see how it's overexposed outside the door. That is called eye adaptation. The game engine is by default trying to do what your eyes do when you go inside and outside, right? They're trying to adjust. So I already added in a post-processing just a second ago. We're going to go to that post-processing and turn that off. Just because we're artists and we want to dial in things. We're not playing a game. So we're going to look for exposure, depth of field, bloom, exposure right here. And see there's a minimum and a maximum brightness. I'm just going to lock it off at 1 for both minimum and maximum. It honestly doesn't matter what you make it as. It'll make it, just lock it up to something, it'll make it consistent. I could probably put a 0.5 to make it a little brighter. But outside, it looks pretty good, right? So let's take, there's a now, with the atmospheric sky thing, I can hold down Control and L. And then as I move my mouse around, I'm changing the time of day. Right? So now the light's coming in through the window and we're getting all these bounces. You see how it's gathering? That's what I'm saying Lumen is a little bit slow. It's gathering. It's not, we've eliminated eye adaptation, but we are gathering light. This is fucking gorgeous. Like the fact that it's doing just this. And as we change the colors, as we change all these other settings, like in the first hour of Unreal, you can learn how to directional light, you can do light shafts and all that kind of stuff. Add in all these things. Have fun, have some fun with lights while we're at it. Let's go directional light, and we can have the here. We could say do advanced. Where was it? Under this advanced. Oh, there's lots of advanced. See, I'm just stumbling all through all the stuff. We'll figure it all out. Light shaft, occlusion, bloom, mess around. So there is something around scattering, is what I actually find. How about we start at the top and then go down? Indirect light intensity, volumetric scattering. I see. I should learn more about these things. But definitely play around with this stuff. Just doing this yesterday. Okay, so we have other atmospheric settings. We go out the door real quick. Or actually, let's finish Lumen talk. What's cool is that we have the ability to light things with objects now. This is something you could do in the previous versions, but the object couldn't move, and you had to really fake it. So now I'm gonna make my own folder. This is part of my style guide. I'm gonna right click. Said I'm going to right click. Come on, Unreal. I said I was gonna right click. Help me help you. Right click and do, no. How do you make a folder, guys? New folder. Okay. Assets. Sometimes it's the little things. What's happening is it's filtering? No. Why can't I see anything? This is hilarious. Dynamic collection. I don't care about that stuff. Settings. Tiles. Thumbnail size. There we go. Assets. Empty. All right. Now we have it working. I don't know what's going on. Materials. And then I'm going to create a base material. All right, so I'm going to call this one M color. Right? And we've seen the inside of materials from your first hour of Unreal. Essentially, these are called physically based materials and our PBR textures. And we're going to add in just a color. I'm going to hold down the 3 button and click, and that's going to give me a constant 3, which is an RGB. I can actually right click and make this a parameter and give it a name. And now it's called color. And that'll be useful in just a second. I'm going to double click on it, give it a default color just so I can see it. Actually, default color could just be white for now. And I will put it in base color. Cool. Save. And so you see how it takes a little while to save these master materials or these base materials? What we want to do is we want to tell the game engine not to be so lazy and work a little faster with our materials. So I've made this base one, and we're gonna get way deep into this in 2 weeks. But I'm gonna start making instances of this. So if I right click and I go up to the very top, create material instance, this is basically something that's a instance material is something that's optimized for real-time performance. So I can actually drive the color at runtime and change and adjust things as I go along. This one by default, Unreal is making it called M color inst. I'm more used to calling it MI color is my style guide I'm used to, but Unreal does have a default style guide that tries to adhere to. And if I place an actor from the basic or from the shapes, if I put in like a little sphere here, and I could drag my color to it. Look at that. Do you guys see how it has like this ambient occlusion around it? This is all new stuff that you can actually see this stuff. If I took this color now and double click on it, so this is what the material instance looks like. It just has a revised interface, so you could just dial in the parameters, right? And I named that box color, and now I can change the color in real time, either while play or just while I'm just like looking at it here in the viewport. So let me move over to blue, or red, yellow, or green. I can see it in real time change. Cool. And now, can you guys see that that wall's green? This is Lumen. This is all brand new. It's figuring out all these bounces in real time, and it's actually affecting the whole world is affecting it, right? So this is super cool, all right? So let's go one step deeper into the rabbit hole. And I was just telling you that you can actually be emissive, right? So here's this emissive color. I want my base color to drive my emissive. So I can say, I'm going to type in the M button and click. It's going to say multiply. And then I'll multiply it by a scalar, right? It's individual value. I'm going to type in S and click and call this one glow. And now I put this in here and I put it inside the emissive, which is the glowing texture. And I hit save. It's gonna take a little while, but what this does is if I have a million instances, it'll propagate and make this glow parameter available for every other parameter. So you see how this is a time-saving venture to create one main material that all these other instances are based off of. And so I have one that's green right here, but I can make another instance and call this one mi blue. Oops, it has to be a letter. Cool. And now I see I have glow and I have color. All right, so I can make this one blue. That's great. And my glow is now set at by default it's 1. That's just because it's because it's a lit material. If I made this material unlit, it would be black because the glow is at 1, but it's still a lit material, so it's a receiving light, so it can be seen. I'm gonna alt drag, have another light, or have another sphere, and put this new one over here. All right, so 2 instances of the same basic material, and now the 2 colors are blending together onto the wall and bouncing off each other. Then if I take this up to 1, you can now see that this is now illuminating my room. And it does it in real time. So this is all, this is all, so I can see, I know everyone who's used Unreal 4 now. So this is huge. And I know this is like, we're playing with spheres right now and materials, and this is super basic, guys, but this is really worth knowing and diving in deep. And that's why I include the video getting to know Lumen, so you guys can understand how you can leverage this. This is ready to be played around with right now, and it's just super cool. So when you have like lamps back in the day, you would like make a lamp and then make it emissive, but then you had to put a light right there too, and then the light was the actual light source. No, you just have a directional light now. You do a skylight, right? So you can have that's like some bounce, and then everything else is just emissive textures. Right? This whole room is purple now because of this light. And if I were to open up this one and add its glow, you'd see how they'd blend together. Like, this is so much fun. Again, as I've said, it's a little slow. It takes a little while for it to propagate and gather, but once it's ready to go, man, this is the jam. Cool. So the only other thing I'd probably want to get into a little bit on this stuff is that all the material properties change how it bounces and glows and stuff. If we go back to this master, by default, your metallic is 0. There's no metallic properties. Specular, which is those white highlights, that's at 0.5. And then roughness is at 0, which means it's a rough, or actually, let's see, roughness is it's at 1. It's 100%. No, what's the default? I don't know what the default is. But as you change these around, parameter, I just change it to parameter. Right? So now we have something that is 0 metallic, 0 specular, 0 roughness. And then we'll go into the our blue sucker. And in real time, again, because we have the instance, I now have metallic, roughness, and specular. And let's look at the where's the blue one? We're here. You'll notice that like if I make it all the way metallic and all the way specular, you probably can't see it because I have the glow up so high now. You'll notice that like this all changes how everything reflects as well. So everything affects how you're doing it. So again, don't go too far in anything because everything is like an ecosystem of parameters, and you dial in one thing, it changes everything else. But so the metallic makes it bounce even more because that's what metals do, right? And so if it's smoother, it's more metallic. If it's specular, it's more shiny. So anyway, this is our level with some spheres, and that's not really world building, but that's addressing light and lumen. Let me check my text file to make sure that I haven't completely screwed the pooch on timing. I guess I could go this fast because a lot of people have already seen this stuff. But so we've turned off adaptation. I've shown you how to change the sun time of day. We've talked about all the different material properties. We know that if we want to use the player start, we hit play, and it's we'll go to the player start. We don't have the player start in this map. But if we also just want to see something that's right in front of us, we can just hit the simulate button, and then we can watch things. Oh, because I'm set to simulate, but it's like the viewport as default play. There's no player starting here. Right. If I put in a basic player start and I hit play, it goes to wherever the player start is, because this is where you want the map to always hit play when you're playing a game. But if I want to just eyeball what something is doing in real time or watch an animation, I would hit the button simulate, which is down at the bottom. Hit the little three buttons and say simulate instead. Simulation is also cool because you can actually pre-simulate physics. Like things can fall, and then you can hit the K button and it'll save where that was. And when you hit stop, those things that fell down naturally will be where they were before. That's actually what the main use of simulate is. And we'll do that in 2 weeks. Okay, so let's do it from scratch. Let's go to a blank map. So new, and we're gonna do empty level. Scary, right? We will save this one as assets. I'm gonna put a folder for maps, and then again, what's my style guide? I think maybe I can call it LVL Lumen. Save, and now we have our empty map. There's like a little faint grid in here, and that's about it. So this is something that was developed for Unreal 427. It's called the Environmental Light Mixer. All right, so it's a panel. It's a new window under Windows. Environmental Light panel. And what's cool about this is that all your lights that you'd want for an atmospheric you'd want for a basic map are here side by side. Create a skylight, create an atmospheric light, create an atmosphere, bring in the atmospheric clouds, and give me some fog. And everything is side by side, so we can actually adjust all these lightings in one details panel that has all lights side by side. Instead of having to jump back and forth between all of them, this is how we can get them running real quick, right? So instead of doing the BP Skysphere, which is just like a PNG of opaque clouds, this is actually volumetric clouds that we can mess around with. We have fog density, so you have exponential height fog, right? So atmospherics, right? By default, the density only goes up to 0.05, but I happen to know for a fact that I can override it and make it any settings, right? So that's completely fogged out. This is really great with those light shafts to like really overdo the environmental fog. But if you use a slider, it just only up to 0.02. And then we can start changing some settings. My skylight, I want to change some more settings. These are only the basic settings. It doesn't give me a lot of the settings I really want. So then for that, I would maybe close the environmental light mixer and then actually go to the details panel. And for Lumen, we can have it capture in real time. So it's always updating. And yeah, cool. So that's pretty much it for the environmental light mixer. And we've talked about fog and how atmospheric and all those things. So let's go ahead and talk about a landscape. The landscape is right here under modes, and I'm gonna go to landscape mode, and it's gonna give me a grid so I can see the scale. And again, even though we have things like nanite and stuff, like only use as much you need. This might be way bigger than my world needs to be. I can always bring it down in scale by saying I only need to have 31 quads by 31 quads. All this information about level building, you can get really far into it. This is like a whole job, right? People do level building as like their entire career. In the syllabus, wow, even that's slow. There is, went down the mocap. A link to a thing called World of Level Design. It's really deep on Unreal 4. It's only got a few for Unreal 5, but when it comes to landscape and world design, this is a great resource. It's just tons and tons of tutorials. One of the great ones is like how to use satellite imagery data to bring in actual geography. So you can like, I've done it. I've like brought in Manhattan before and be able to recreate New York, just the terrain of it, using like grayscale satellite imagery. They have lots of great tutorials for doing that. So one of the how to make crazy materials that figure out, like you put one material on the ground and it figures out the incline and it changes it to be grass if it's at a certain angle, and if it's another angle it becomes automatically rock and snow, if it's like all sorts of crazy stuff for world level design that we can't really get into in this class because we're mainly going to be getting things out of the asset store for the end. But so if you want to import this grayscale imagery and you can import it from a file here. Otherwise, we're just going to create it from new and just make it a grid that's big enough and enough resolution. Cool. So this is going to give me a terrain, and I can throw grass material on there. We have grass in our starter content. I can look at and filter by materials, and I see that we got grass. I probably can't do all in paint mode. Let's see. Anyway, so right now you see it looks like a Photoshop brush, right? As soon as we create our landscape, it's moved me over to sculpt, and I have all these different features of basically additive or subtractive landscape tools. And again, these are just like Photoshop, but in 3D, right? So if I'm clicking down, it's making a mountain. If I right click, sorry, if I shift click, it goes back down, right? So crevasses and mountains, right? We're just painting on information. And you can see how this could be a grayscale thing, right? If it's really white, it goes up. If it's very black on that image, it would go down. And so we can make mountain ranges. Usually you want to hide the perimeter, but you don't have to hide it with mountains. You can hide it with ocean now. So one thing I've also done for my cooking show before I got in here was I turned on a plugin called Water. So if you search for a plugin under Edit, Plugins, you have a thing called Water, and it takes a while to recompile shaders again. So I've done this earlier today, but when you turn on the Water, you now have a bunch of water actors, which I have never done in Unreal 5, so I have no idea how to find them. Let's see. Let's go out of Sculpt. This is going to be fun. How are we going to find that? Let's go to Window and see if we have Place Actors still. All right, so there's the old Place Actors window, and I'm going to search for water. Okay. Islands, lakes, oceans, rivers, all sorts of other different things. So if I was going to do an island, it's going to make an island inside of water. If it's going to be a lake, it's going to create a body of water that I can put an island inside of. And if it does ocean, it's going to create a mask around the whole thing and make an ocean. So let's bring in ocean first. It has these little splines we talked about. All right, so it's kind of figured the perimeter and created these little splines, which can all be adjusted. And right now what we're doing is we're compiling 780 shaders, but in a second, water's going to appear. It's already there. You just can't see it. All right, so here's these little points. I can kind of drag them off. Again, these are what we've been talking about, splines. Splines have handles. All right, so instead of worrying about how many pixels big this lake is, it's just a couple of curves. And you could change the angle. You can draw your ocean, right? So, and each one has a custom little shader. I didn't get too far into. I'm gonna make it come back over here. So it's cool to be able to like not have to like hide the distance with like fog or mountains every time. You can actually now just have an infinite ocean. So one more way of hiding it. Oh, every time I move it around, it changes how many shaders. Okay, we will stop screwing around with that. All right, so you'll have to just take my word for it. We're going to move on, and the water will magically appear at some point. I'm going to go ahead and save this map because everything's looking a little shaky right now. Save early, save often. You say LVL Ocean. Cool. If you want any more information about the landscape tool, like I went really quick over this. A lot of you folks already know this kind of stuff. Again, in the syllabus, I have the documentation for the landscape tool and the foliage tool, which we're about to use. So feel free to use that, the official documentation. Again, you could sculpt, and there's different ways like simulating drainage and simulating different erosions and all this kind of stuff, things I've never even done before. But it's there for you if you need to use the documentation. We're going to go into, oh, look at that. It's just starting. All right. So we can adjust maybe the height of this. Or does it not go up and down? I might have screwed the pooch on this a little bit. Let's see. This is a cool thing I did. not on purpose. You go back to landscape mode, maybe go back to sculpt. You kind of hit shift and make it go down. There we go. So I'm now making my coastline. But what's really cool about this stuff is not only is it above the water, but you go down, it's going to process this post-processing, still processing shaders. It looks underwater too. So you have like the fog and the whatever underneath the water, and you can do underwater stuff. Again, I've never done a demo with ocean. I've only done lakes, and ocean's way more processor intensive. I should start with stick to the rivers and lakes that you're used to. Don't go chasing waterfalls, everyone. Um, but anyway, see how it automatically adjusts the post processing so you can see the murkiness. Super cool, right? Um, Changing it to make it your own thing and stylize it, a little bit more difficult. It's an all material. It's a really complicated material with all these different instance parameters that kind of adjust it. I'm gonna go out of landscape mode, go to select mode, and there we go. And we've got our ocean there. Funky, funky. Cool. So let's go into the yeah, we got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to go into the foliage tool now. So now basically what we have is like this way of painting on static meshes, right? So you get the idea that we can add in static meshes. I already built a little house, right? And then we just drag in things from the content browser, and there they are, and you can move and scale and rotate them any way you want to. But what's cool about the foliage tool is that you can spray it on with these same Photoshop brushes, right? So we would let's say foliage. Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. I'm gonna paint. Let's close that, do it this way. Modeling, fracture, landscape, foliage. You have the window closed. Does it show foliage? Figuring it all out. Let's see if I hope it fits. No. Let's bring back up. Replace vector. Editor modes. Mode toolbox. And there's my foliage tool. But where do I, oh, there it is. They put it at the bottom now. Drop foliage here. So I have starter content. I have some foliage. It's not under materials. It's under static meshes. And we have a small bush, which for the last 2.5 years by default is missing its material. Come on, Unreal, get on that. All right. And so you have this little window, and you can see a count of how many you've already painted on. You have a checkbox for paint it now, don't paint it on now. And then you have a little dome, just like a brush, and I can paint on some foliage, right? Paint on some foliage. You have some interesting options like brush size, right? You can make it much bigger, right? You have the ability to change how much density. Right now it's pretty dense. I might want to have it way more sparse, right? Much less. Cool. And then if I want to have a little bit more diversity in here, I can also paint on chairs. You paint on anything you want to. These rocks. And then sconces. All right. So I already have plenty of bushes. I'm going to uncheck bush. And then I have the other ones checked on, and I can start painting those ones instead. All right. It's a little dense. It's okay if I go too far. We have remove, we have erase, right? If I want to erase some of those bushes, I need to check it as well. All right, start over from scratch. So again, just like the landscape tool, there's lots of options for selecting individual bushes, filling in certain levels. You can use the documentation to get into that. I'm going to go ahead and go back into paint, turn them all on, make it much bigger. Cool. Super dense. Not cool. Let's undo. Can I just undo? Yeah. There we go. So if you hit play and you run around, these things don't have collisions. They are instances just like our materials instances. They are optimized for performance. You can give them collision if you want to. That's something you have to override. Imagine if I had to think about all the physics of all the collision boxes. So it kind of by default takes them all off. Again, you can add them back on if you need to, but right now I'd run through all of them. All right, so normally you take foliage, like if you have a bunch of rocks and stuff, you actually just bring in these invisible blocking volumes, and they're just 6 sides, super simple to compute, and you just put them around trees you don't want to be able to hit. But I have a homework assignment where I'm only using starter content, and I don't want to be just limited to these small things. I want to be able to make my own things that are combinations. So I want to use these assets as Legos, and I want to be able to paint those Legos. So we've already seen blueprints. We've seen the blueprints are a way of doing interactivity, but they're also a way of stacking objects on top of each other, right? They're a way of combining components together. So we're going to make a blueprint together. I'm going to get out of landscape mode. If you stay in that painting mode, it is a little more processor intensive. Make a new folder under assets and call this one folder blueprints. And then to be able to see it, you take off that filter for static meshes, go into blueprints, right click, and say blueprint class. There are tons and tons of kinds of blueprints. Actor is one that can do everything, but it never has everything exposed. But there's very specialized ones. There's things around just camera shake and around all sorts of stuff. We're going to start with actor. We're not going to go too deep into it. And I'm going to call it BP. Well, actually, okay, I'm going to call some BP something. I don't know what I'm going to do with this one just yet. But there's already blueprints in here. Let's start off with a blueprint that already exists. Let's filter by blueprint class and go up to the very top and look at the starter content. You'll see that we have a sconce that's actually a blueprint sconce. And what is it? It's an old Unreal Engine 4 idea of putting a light with a light source. Right, so it has like a point light. So this is the old way of doing things. Right, it's a light with a light that's facing it, but it's a point light. If it was a spotlight, that'd be a good use case for making a component. The spotlight's a specific kind of fall off. Right? What if I want to paint with a blueprint? So there's a thing called a foliage actor. If I go to assets, blueprints, right click, and somewhere under blueprints, we're going to find a thing called a foliage actor, or something under foliage actor, actor foliage. I'm calling this one BP sconce plus goose. And then we open it up. We just select a blueprint that already exists. All right, so it is called wall sconce. Save. If I go back here, I can't take this wall sconce or can I? Oh shit. Unreal 5, guys. Oh, no. Wait. No, that is the actor foliage. Never mind. If I took my BP something, it would say no. Okay, thank you. I'm very modest. I know what I don't know, and I don't know Unreal 5. So so this thing's called actor foliage, but what this is now is we have a blueprint that we can paint foliage with. All right. So let's go ahead and uncheck the other ones. So we're just painting our sconces. Come over here to a clean little spot. And we just have BP sconce foliage actor selected. Everything else is unselected. Go into paint, and there's some sconces. And you can see by the sheer fact that they have this little icon of a light there that they are indeed blueprints. Right now, what I don't like about them is that they're kind of under the ground. Well, let me go over to this blueprint wall sconce, take my lamp and my point light, lift them up, and hit save or compile. Now they've all come up a little bit, right? So I'm wholesale changing these properties because they're all instances off a single one, right? Let's see if it does it in real time. I change it down. Yeah, see, all of them are changing together at the same time. So this shows the beauty of instancing and the power of being able to change all these things. And if you just placed each one out there by themselves, I have to be changed to every single one of them. So that's cool. But what are some other cool things that I could do? Well, I could say, we can make this a little bigger so you can see what the blueprint interface. So over here on the left side are all my components, right? So this is the static mesh, this is the light. I can also add in a, oh, I don't know, particle system. And parent the particle system to there. And then let's just choose a particle system. Let's choose fire. So now we have fire. Let's compiling shaders. And now all of them have fire. Right? So now thinking about these blueprints and the foliage thing, you can paint all sorts of weird combinations of just these basic starter content. So it's kind of the creative limitation that you have to kind of brainstorm your way around it. We're going to come up with these crazy stories. We're going to use artificial intelligence to help us mood board these crazy stories. And then we're going to try to make them come to fruition by using tiny, small Lego sets of actors that are already in the starter content. Right? So, second. Let me make sure I didn't skip anything. The main thing to keep in mind though is all my lights, everything is dynamic. They're all set to movable. Let me go out of foliage mode so we can see our objects in World Outliner. All these things can all be movable, whereas before, by default, they would be static. And this again because of Lumen. So just making sure that that's there so you can move them and rotate them around. And there, again, if I hold down Control L, change the time of day. Is it not here anymore? Yeah. These are all interact with each other. Great. Cool. Pretty nice, if not rudimentary. All right. And then the last thing is, and I don't know where the heck this is anymore. Let's see. Maybe it's down. And yeah, high resolution screenshot. So the homework is to take screenshots of your world that you build. Right? Give me like 3 good ones. A hero shot usually is something where a hero is usually taller than everyone else. It's looking up at something. It's like this adoration of looking up at a statue or whatever. So take some hero shots, make it look bold, make it look bigger than life, make it look dramatic. It's a fun little camera exercise. Oh man, look how nice that looks. That light just on that rock. That's pretty crazy. So we just go over here at this little top left of the viewport, say high resolution screenshot, and then it says screenshot multiplier. It's the size of my layout. So this is a 2650 by 1440 resolution screen. If we take a screenshot, it would be this sub matrix of that screen, right? So something around like 720p, right? But if I do a multiplier, it'll multiply it, and you can make a much bigger screenshot. Don't go above 8 or you will crash your computer. But I can do 2 or 3 times. You can also, if you want, go into here and go to immersive mode or hit F11, and it will go full screen, so you know what your base resolution is by default. And then you say, well, I know I want it to be 4K, it needs to be 2x HD or whatever. And then you can capture. It'll take a second to compute. And then it gives you a link at the bottom. You click and it opens up. And it's basically inside your content folder next to your project is your screenshot. So it's my project saved screenshots. And in here, you can see the high resolution screenshot that I just took. But yeah, you can if you have like a big screen, a big monitor, or whatever, a good graphics card, you can make like a poster. All right, so I didn't hit the play button, so it's going to show me some of the things like the widgets and things like that. Like you see very faintly, there's a box around there. So you might want to hit play and then do the high resolution screenshot, so it gets rid of all that hidden in world stuff. But you can see it's a much higher resolution than my actual screen. Cool. So let me go out F11, get out of full screen or whatever, and just host those on your website, on our blog. Let's see this for Hooter, right? And that is everything. Any questions on that so far? Cool. So I'm gonna save early, save often. And I'll continue to work on this same exact project every week. I just made a bunch of crap. You guys can spend time being artists. I was just showing you something technical. I'm going to stop the screen recording. I'll compress it and put it on the demos later on.